What happens when a beloved hairstylist sits down for what should be a friendly chat about his career, only to be blindsided by a host who seems determined to tear him down? In just 42 seconds, a single comment would ignite a firestorm that turned a daytime talk show into a battlefield, leaving one panelist humiliated and a guest walking off, set in disgust. The Loose Women's studio was buzzing with its usual energy. The cameras were rolling, the audience was settled in their seats, and the panelists were ready for another episode of lighthearted conversation and celebrity interviews. Chris Appleton, the celebrity hairstylist known for his work with some of the biggest names in Hollywood, walked onto the set with a warm smile. He had been invited to discuss his latest projects and his journey in the beauty industry. The producers had promised him it would be a fun, relaxed conversation, a chance to connect with viewers and share his passion for his craft. Seated at the desk were the day's panelists. Denise Welch, known for her outspoken personality and quick wit, sat at the center. Next to her were Nadia Sawalha, whose expressive face often telegraphed exactly what she was thinking, and Kay Adams, who typically played the role of mediator. On the far end sat Jane Moore, quietly observing as always. Chris took his seat across from them, greeting each panelist with a friendly hello. Nadia smiled warmly at him. Jane gave him an encouraging nod. Kay welcomed him to the show with her usual professional charm. Denise offered a tight smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. The interview started pleasantly enough. Kay Adams kicked things off with a softball question. She asked Chris about his recent work styling hair for a major awards show. Chris lit up as he described the creative process, the long hours, and the satisfaction of seeing his work on the red carpet. It's really about understanding the person you're working with, Chris explained, his hands moving expressively as he spoke. Every client is different. They have different hair textures, different face shapes, different personal styles. My job is to bring out their best features and help them feel confident and beautiful. The audience seemed engaged, leaning forward in their seats. Nadia Sawala nodded enthusiastically. I love that. It's not just about making someone look good, it's about making them feel good too. Exactly, Chris said, smiling. That's the whole point. When someone feels confident about how they look, it changes everything. It affects how they carry themselves, how they interact with others, how they feel about themselves. Jane Moore jumped in with a question about his training. How did you get into hairstyling? Was it something you always wanted to do? Chris's face softened with nostalgia. I've been fascinated by hair and beauty since I was very young. I remember watching my mom get ready for special occasions, seeing how doing her hair and makeup transformed not just her appearance, but her whole mood. I knew I wanted to be part of that. So I went to beauty school, worked my way up from the bottom, spent years learning and practicing and perfecting my craft. Kay Adams smiled. And now you're working with some of the most famous people in the world. That must be quite a journey. It has been, Chris agreed. But whether I'm working with a celebrity, or someone getting ready for their wedding, or just someone who wants to feel good about themselves, the principles are the same. Listen to what they want. Understand their needs. Use your skills to help them achieve their vision. Then, Denise leaned forward. There was a shift in the air, subtle but noticeable. The smile on her face didn't match the look in her eyes. Chris, I have to ask, she said, her tone shifting to something sharper. A lot of people wonder if what you do is really that difficult. I mean, it's just hair, right? You're not exactly saving lives. You're not curing cancer. You're not teaching children or building houses. You're doing hair. The studio went quiet. You could hear the audience members shifting in their seats. Nadia Sawalha's eyebrows shot up, her mouth forming a small O of surprise. Jane Moore shifted uncomfortably in her seat, but clearly taken aback. Kay Adams's professional smile faltered. Chris maintained his composure, though his smile faltered for just a moment. He took a breath. gathering himself. "Well, Denise," Chris replied calmly, choosing his words carefully, "I think any craft that requires years of training and dedication deserves respect. Whether it's hair, medicine, teaching, construction, or anything else, we all contribute to society in our own ways. Not everything has to save lives to have value. Beauty and confidence matter to people. They matter a lot. And helping someone feel good about themselves, helping them present their best self to the world, that's meaningful work." Denise waved her hand dismissively, actually waving it in the air as if swatting away his words like annoying flies. "Oh, come on. Let's be honest here. Let's really be honest. You're playing with hair extensions and curling irons and styling products. My hairdresser does the same thing every week for 30 quid, down at the local salon. She cuts hair, she colors hair, she styles hair. What makes you so special? What makes what you do worth thousands and thousands of pounds while she struggles to make ends meet? Is your scissors magic? Does your hairspray have special powers?" The audience murmured loudly now. Some gasped audibly. Others exchanged shocked glances with the people sitting next to them. A few shook their heads in disbelief. The energy in the studio had completely shifted. What had started as a friendly interview had turned into something else entirely. Something uncomfortable and confrontational. Kay Adams jumped in quickly, her voice taking on that overly bright tone people use when trying to smooth over an awkward situation. "I think what Denise means is that people are curious about what sets celebrity hairstyling apart from everyday salon work. Like, what's the difference between styling someone for the red carpet versus styling someone for, a normal day?" Chris nodded, appreciating Kay's attempt to redirect. "That's a great question. The difference is often in the stakes and the precision required. When you're styling someone for a red carpet event or a magazine cover, every single detail matters. The lighting, the cameras, the way the hair moves, how it looks from every angle. You're creating something that will be photographed hundreds of times and seen by millions of people. The pressure is immense. One flyaway hair, one section that falls flat, and it's captured forever." But Denise was not done. Not even close. She leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms across her chest in a posture of defiance. "No, Kay, that's not what I mean. Stop trying to make this sound nicer than it is. I mean exactly what I said. I think we've created this whole celebrity culture, this whole ridiculous system where people get paid absolutely obscene amounts of money for doing things that aren't really that impressive. Things that regular people do every single day for a fraction of the cost. And Chris here is part of that problem. He's part of this whole machine that tells people they need to spend thousands of pounds to look good, that regular hairdressers aren't good enough, that you have to have a celebrity stylist to be worth something." Chris took a breath. His jaw tightened visibly, a muscle twitching near his temple, but he kept his voice steady, refusing to rise to the bait. "Denise, I respect your opinion, but I have to disagree strongly. What I do requires years of training, artistry, technical skill, and an understanding of each client's unique needs. I studied for years. I apprenticed. I practiced on countless clients. I learned about different hair types, face shapes, skin tones, personal styles. It's not just about making someone look good for a few hours. It's about helping them feel confident and empowered. It's about understanding that when someone looks in the mirror and loves what they see, it changes their entire day, their entire outlook." Nadia Sawalha nodded. "I think that's a lovely way to put it, Chris. And honestly, I've seen your work. It's incredible." Denise rolled her eyes dramatically, making sure the audience could see her disdain. "Oh, please. Nadia, you're just saying that because he's sitting right here. Let's not pretend like he's Michelangelo or Picasso or some great artist. He does hair. It's not sculpture. It's not painting. It's not creating something that lasts for centuries. It washes out at the end of the day. It grows back in a few weeks. It's temporary. It's fleeting. It's not art. It's vanity. It's superficial. And let's be real. It's feeding into this culture of obsession with appearance that's damaging to so many people. Chris's expression shifted dramatically. The polite smile was gone now, completely vanished, replaced by a look of genuine hurt and deep frustration. His eyes glistened slightly, and his voice when he spoke carried real emotion. Denise, I came here today thinking we were going to have a respectful conversation. I was excited to be here. I thought this would be fun. I didn't come here to be insulted or to have my career, something I've dedicated my entire adult life to, belittled on national television. I didn't come here to be attacked. Insulted? Denise shot back. I'm just being honest. Maybe you're not used to that in your world, where everyone tells you how amazing you are all the time. Jane Moore finally spoke up. Denise, I think you're being a bit harsh. Chris is our guest, and he deserves to be treated with respect. Denise turned to Jane with a sharp look. Oh, so now I'm the bad guy for having an opinion. This is supposed to be a show where we speak our minds, isn't it? Or are we only allowed to do that when it's convenient? Kay Adams tried again to diffuse the situation. Let's all take a breath here. We can have different opinions without things getting heated. But Chris had heard enough. He looked directly at Denise. You know what, Denise? You can have your opinion, but what you're doing right now isn't about having an opinion. It's about being rude, and I don't have to sit here and listen to it. Denise laughed, a short dismissive sound. Oh, here we go. Can't handle a little criticism? Typical. It's not criticism, Chris said, his voice rising slightly. Criticism would be constructive. What you're doing is just tearing someone down for no reason, and I have to wonder why. What did I do to you? Why are you so determined to make me feel small? The audience was silent now, hanging on every word. Nadia Sawalha looked like she wanted to say something, but couldn't find the words. Jane Moore stared at Denise with a look that was part disbelief, part disappointment. Kay Adams glanced nervously at the cameras, clearly aware that this was spiraling out of control. Denise leaned forward again, her voice dripping with condescension. You want to know why? Because I'm tired of this nonsense. I'm tired of watching people like you get put on a pedestal for doing things that don't matter. There are people out there doing real work, making real differences, and they don't get a fraction of the attention or money you get. So, excuse me if I'm not impressed. Chris stood up. The movement was sudden, and it caught everyone off guard. He looked down at Denise, his expression a mixture of anger and sadness. You know what? You're entitled to your opinion. But you're not entitled to be cruel, and I'm not going to sit here and be your punching bag just because you're having a bad day, or because you think it makes good television. He turned to the other panelists. Nadia, Jane, Kay, thank you for having me. I'm sorry it ended this way. Kay Adams reached out as if to stop him. Chris, please, we can... But Chris was already removing his microphone. He placed it carefully on the desk and started to walk off the set. Denise called after him, her voice sharp and mocking. Oh, so you're just going to run away? Very professional. Chris stopped. He turned back one last time, locking eyes with Denise. I'm not running away. I'm choosing not to engage with someone who clearly has no interest in treating me with basic human decency. There's a difference. And with that, he walked off. The cameras captured every step as he left the set, his head held high. The audience sat in stunned silence. Nadia Sawalha broke the quiet first. Well, that was uncomfortable. Jane Moore turned to Denise. You went too far. Denise shrugged, though her face had lost some of its earlier bravado. I was just being honest. No, Kay Adams said firmly. You were being mean. There's a difference between honesty and cruelty. The tension among the panelists was palpable. Nadia Sawalha shook her head. I just don't understand why you had to go after him like that. He was being perfectly nice. Denise folded her arms defensively. So what? I'm not allowed to have an opinion now? I thought that was the whole point of this show. Jane Moore leaned forward. Having an opinion is one thing. Attacking a guest is another. You weren't trying to have a discussion. You were trying to provoke him. Denise's eyes flashed. Maybe he needed to be provoked. Maybe someone needs to call out this ridiculous celebrity worship culture we're all supposed to buy into. Kay Adams sighed. Denise, you can make that point without being cruel to someone who's sitting right in front of you. Chris didn't do anything to deserve that. The audience was starting to murmur now, clearly divided. Some seemed to be on Denise's side, nodding along with her points about celebrity culture, but many more looked uncomfortable, shifting in their seats and exchanging worried glances. Nadia Sawalha turned to the camera. I think we need to address what just happened here. How we had a guest on today who came here in good faith, and he was treated in a way that I personally found unacceptable. Denise scoffed. Oh, please, don't make this into something it's not. It is something, Jane Moore said quietly but firmly. It's a big something. We're supposed to make our guests feel welcome, not tear them apart. Kay Adams looked directly at Denise. I think you owe Chris an apology. Denise's face hardened. I'm not apologizing for speaking my mind. Then maybe you need to think about how you speak your mind, Nadia said. Because what you did today was not okay. The show cut to a commercial break, but the damage was done. When they returned, the energy on set was completely different. The panelists tried to move on to other topics, but the cloud of what had just happened hung over everything. Denise seemed quieter now, though whether it was from genuine reflection or just embarrassment was hard to tell. In the studio, whispers spread among the crew. Some were shocked by what they had witnessed. Others were angry. A few producers were already on their phones, no doubt dealing with the immediate fallout. The audience members who had been there to see a lighthearted chat show had instead witnessed something far more raw and uncomfortable. As the cameras continued to roll, the remaining panelists did their best to salvage the rest of the episode, but it was clear that everyone's mind was still on what had happened. Nadia Sawalha kept glancing at Denise with a look that was equal parts frustration and disappointment. Jane Moore seemed to withdraw into herself, speaking only when directly addressed. Kay Adams soldiered on, but even her usually unflappable demeanor showed cracks. Behind the scenes, Chris Appleton had not left the building immediately. He stood in the hallway just off the set, taking deep breaths and trying to process what had just happened. A production assistant approached him cautiously, offering water and a quiet apology. Chris accepted both with a gracious nod, though his hands were shaking slightly. I can't believe that just happened, he said to the assistant. I've done hundreds of interviews. I've never walked off a set before, but I couldn't just sit there and take that. The assistant nodded sympathetically. You did the right thing. What she said was out of line. Chris looked back toward the set, where the show was still being filmed. I just don't understand. Why would someone go out of their way to be so mean? What's the point? Back on set, the show was winding down. As they approached the final segment, Kay Adams made an unexpected move. Instead of wrapping up with the usual lighthearted banter, she looked directly into the camera. Before we go, I want to say something. What happened today with Chris Appleton was not okay. As a show, we pride ourselves on having open and honest conversations, but that should never come at the expense of treating people with respect and kindness. Nadia Sawalha nodded in agreement. Absolutely. Chris, if you're watching, I want you to know that many of us here think you're incredibly talented, and you didn't deserve to be spoken to that way. Jane Moore added, We hope you'll accept our apology for how this interview went. The camera panned to Denise, who sat stiffly in her chair. She opened her mouth as if to say something, then closed it again. The silence stretched out for a few uncomfortable seconds before Kay Adams quickly moved to close the show. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. As soon as the cameras stopped rolling, the set erupted into activity. Producers rushed over to the panelists. Crew members started packing up equipment. The audience filed out, many still talking animatedly about what they had just witnessed. Denise stood up and walked off the set without a word to anyone, her face a mask of stubborn defiance. Nadia Sawalha caught up with Jane Moore and Kay Adams backstage. "That was one of the most uncomfortable things I've ever been a part of," she said, running a hand through her hair. "I felt so bad for Chris." "We all did," Jane agreed. "Except apparently for the one person who should have." Kay Adams sighed heavily. "I tried to keep it from escalating, but once Denise gets going..." She trailed off, shaking her head. "I hope Chris is okay. That can't have been easy for him." One of the producers approached them. "We're getting a lot of messages already. People are not happy about how Chris was treated." Nadia nodded. "As they shouldn't be. We need to make this right somehow." Meanwhile, Chris Appleton had finally left the building. As he stepped out into the fresh air, he felt a strange mixture of relief and frustration. He had stood up for himself, which felt empowering, but the whole experience had left a bitter taste. He had come to the show excited to share his passion and his work with an audience, and instead, he had been attacked and belittled. Back in the Loose Women studio, the other panelists were still processing what had happened. Jane Moore sat in her dressing room, replaying the confrontation in her mind. She had been on the show for years, and she had seen plenty of heated debates and disagreements. But this felt different. This had felt personal and mean-spirited in a way that crossed a line. Kay Adams was in a meeting with producers, discussing how to handle the situation. They talked about whether they should issue a statement, whether they should reach out to Chris directly, and what to do about Denise. The conversation went in circles, with no easy answers presenting themselves. Nadia Sawalha was scrolling through messages on her phone, seeing the public reaction already starting to build. People were calling out Denise's behavior. Others were praising Chris for standing up for himself and walking away. A few defended Denise, saying she was just being honest, but they were in the minority. Denise Welch, for her part, had retreated to her own dressing room and closed the door. She sat alone, her earlier confidence replaced by something harder to read. Was it regret? Defiance? Embarrassment? Perhaps a combination of all three. She had said what she believed, stood by her opinions, but even she could feel the shift in the room when Chris walked off. Even she had seen the looks on her fellow panelists' faces. The Loose Women crew began the usual post-show cleanup, but the atmosphere was heavy. People spoke in hushed tones, occasionally glancing toward Denise's closed dressing room door. Some wondered if this would blow over by the next episode. Others felt certain that this was a turning point, that something fundamental had shifted. Chris Appleton, now in a car heading away from the studio, stared out the window at the passing city. His phone was buzzing constantly with messages from friends and colleagues who had already heard what happened. Word traveled fast in his industry, and apparently word traveled fast when someone walked off a live television show. He thought about all the times he had dealt with difficult situations, demanding clients, last-minute changes, high-pressure environments. He had always prided himself on staying calm and professional. But today had been different. Today, he had reached his limit. And while part of him worried about how this would affect his reputation, another part felt strangely proud. He had stood up for himself. He had refused to be treated poorly. That had to count for something. Back at the studio, Jane Moore emerged from her dressing room and found Nadia Sawalha in the hallway. They exchanged a long look. "We need to talk about this," Jane said. "We can't just pretend it didn't happen." Nadia agreed. "I know, but what do we say? Do we confront Denise directly? Do we wait for the producers to handle it?" "I think we have to say something," Jane replied. "If we don't, it's like we're condoning what happened." Kay Adams joined them, looking exhausted. "The producers want us to move on. They think addressing it further will just keep the controversy alive." Nadia frowned. But we can't just ignore it. People saw what happened. They're going to have questions. I know, Kay said. But that's the official line for now. We're supposed to act like it was just a disagreement that got a bit heated, not a full-blown meltdown. Jane shook her head. That's not going to work. People aren't stupid. They saw Denise go after Chris. They saw him walk off. You can't spin that as just a little disagreement. The three women stood in the hallway, united in their discomfort, but unsure of what to do next. The show had always thrived on having diverse opinions and lively debates. But there was a difference between a lively debate and what had happened today. Today had crossed a line, and they all knew it. Denise's door finally opened. She stepped out, her expression guarded. She saw the three panelists standing together and paused. For a moment, it looked like she might say something, but then she simply walked past them without a word, her head held high, her jaw set in a hard line. Nadia watched her go, then turned to the others. Well, that answers that question. She's not apologizing. Jane sighed. I didn't think she would. Kay rubbed her temples. So, this is going to be a long week. The studio gradually emptied out as the day came to an end. The lights dimmed, the cameras were covered, and the set that had been the scene of such drama just hours earlier now sat quiet and empty. But the echoes of what had happened lingered, in the minds of everyone who had been there, in the conversations that would continue long into the night, in the footage that would be replayed and analyzed by viewers. Chris Appleton sat in his hotel room that evening, still processing the day's events. He had turned down several interview requests already. He didn't want to add fuel to the fire. He just wanted to move on. But he also knew that this moment would likely follow him for a while. People would ask him about it. It would come up in future interviews. The day he walked off loose. Women would become part of his story, whether he liked it or not. He thought about Denise's words, about how she had dismissed his work, belittled his craft, questioned his worth. It had hurt more than he wanted to admit, not because he doubted himself. He knew he was good at what he did, but because it felt so unnecessary. He had never done anything to her. He had come to the show with good intentions, ready to be open and friendly. And for reasons he still didn't fully understand, she had decided to tear him down. But he had also learned something important. He had learned that it was okay to walk away. That staying and enduring mistreatment wasn't strength. It was just accepting disrespect. Walking away had been the right choice, even if it wasn't the easy one. Even if it caused a scene. Even if it would be talked about and debated. He had protected his dignity, and that mattered more than any interview or television appearance ever could. At the Loose Women's Studios, the night cleaning crew went about their work, unaware of the drama that had unfolded hours earlier. They vacuumed the floors, wiped down the desks, straightened the chairs. By the time they finished, the set looked exactly as it always did, pristine and ready for the next day's show. But everyone who had been there that afternoon knew that something had changed. A line had been crossed, and there was no going back. The confrontation between Chris Appleton and Denise Welch would be remembered as one of the most uncomfortable moments in Loose Women history. It was a stark reminder that live television could be unpredictable, that strong personalities could clash, and that sometimes the kindest thing a person could do was stand up for themselves and walk away. Chris had done just that, leaving behind a set full of stunned faces, a host who had shown her true colors, and a moment that would be replayed and discussed for a very long time to come.